How many times have you heard someone say, if I had his money, I could do things my way? But little they know that it's so hard to find one rich man in 10 with a satisfied mind. Once I was waiting in fortune and fame, everything that I dreamed for to get a start in life's game. But suddenly it happened, I lost every dime. But I'm richer by far with a satisfied mind. Money can't buy back your youth when you're old, or a friend when you're lonely, or love that's grown cold. The wealthiest person is a pauper at times compared to the man with a satisfied mind. When life has ended, my time has run out. My friends and my loved ones I'll leave, there's no doubt. But there's one thing for certain, when it comes my time, I'll leave this old world with a satisfied mind.
One thing I've learned, if you don't hold their feet to the fire, everybody gets burned.
Hold on. Before you start waving around that freedom of speech thing, when you're in a crowded movie theater and you scream fire, you better be able to smell smoke. If you come on this radio show and you start saying inconsiderate things like that, you better have more behind you, pal, than just your thumb. I've been listening to talk radio for years, and one thing I just can't stand is when the host has to, push his way onto people, beat the callers into his way of thinking, extending his ego, or when the callers call in and say something so outrageous and the host lets it go unchallenged. The sign you're on the road to truth is the lack of contradiction. You want to find truth, you just don't simply believe somebody because of their authority or their degree, or you listen to what they say, you test it against reality, and you hold their feet to the fire. right, we are back and we are live. Feet to the Fire. I am your host, James Arthur-Yanchik, the Black Knight of Talk Radio. FeetToTheFireRadio.com is the main website for the show. Once you go there, you can hit some of the menu items to find out the myriad of other places that this touches. Right now we're touching you through Spreaker.com live. It will be uploaded to YouTube once done and available for perusing over there, watching, absorbing, what have you. Opening song, Satisfied Mind. I love that song. I went searching for a public domain version one I could use. I hope I found the right one. But a lot of people have done it. And it just, man, I get like tears in my eyes when I hear it because it's so true. And how many times have you heard someone say, if I had his money, I could do things my way? But little they know, it's so hard to find one rich man in 10 with a satisfied mind. And when my life is ended and my time is run out, my friends and my loved ones, I'll leave, there's no doubt. But one thing's for certain, when it comes my time, I'll leave this old world with a satisfied mind. And I think that's the goal when it's trying to solve problems and live your life and what have you. That's really kind of like what we want to do, because you can build mountains, you can become infamous, and as your life is draining from you, what will be your satisfaction at that point, I guess. But anyway, I want to talk about solving the problems. Let me just read something that I wrote in the description of the show. There are ways to solve the most complicated problems, most dire problems on the planet, which are in themselves simple. The actual ways are simple. Besides being honest and educated on the issues and facts, the main ingredient is peace with the answer. That is, to let go of the problem and embrace the peace of a satisfied mind who did the best they can for the highest good. When you are attached to the answer, that is where the problem is. However, of course, this does not mean that noise. My phone. The problem does not mean that you could just, just take the simplest, easiest one, the nicest one, whatever the deal is. And that's not what it's saying. It's saying the satisfied mind, peace of doing the highest, best good. Well, how do you do that? Now, all this talk about the abortion laws and whatnot, the heartbeat bills that are being passed, and the outrage by people are actually saying it's unchristian to have the abortion laws. Well, in finding out the answers, I did some various thinking about the premise, the structure of finding a solution. And abortion just happened to be, because it was going on, the hot topic that slipped into the formula. And I spent a bunch of time writing and rewriting. I was going to come up with like an outline or some kind of graphic. I even thought about going live video, but after I don't know how many pages of rewriting it, I can't put together this outline because it doesn't fit on a piece of paper. It's not hard, and once we start going through this, you can see that you can fit anything in this structure. And if you follow the structure with both honesty, in other words, you're going in there to really find an answer, you're not going to go in there preloaded with an answer, and the motivation for your answer, let's say, would be to find the rightest answer. Now, we'll find out, we'll get to that right point. But so I ended up coming up with this to slip the abortion aspect into it. And if you're familiar with Socrates, at least Socrates as portrayed by Plato, at least in his early writings. It is theorized that in the later Plato writings, he kind of used them as a sock puppet, but perhaps in some of the early ones, and at least in the structure of Republic. I remember listening to that Republic, the book, being read, not agreeing with some of the decisions, and I saw that when you come up with a narrative like that, it ends up, you could use that easily as a, to push your agenda. But using the Socratesian method, I've started thinking about abortion, and what I want to do is I want to split the topic and subtopics into, a fork. It doesn't mean you pick one and leave everything alone. What you have to do is, if you look at defining the answers like a root of a plant, as you go down the stem would be the question. As it branches off, there's all kinds of the three-dimensional layers of the branch off, and even though the analogy doesn't work all the way, what would happen at the bottom of the roots is they would start to connect again. And you'd have roots that would end out into, they wouldn't connect, and then it would connect again, and then there would be an answer at the bottom. And that's, if I could make a graph to fit along with this in a 3D sense where you could spin it around and all that would be excellent, because it would be a great visual. I don't have the ability to do that graphically. And if anybody would like to work on that, would be fine, but it would take hours of talk to setting up different points. And what I have here is not exhaustive, because it would take a long time and would be boring for about a huge amount of people who would be listening to this. In fact, I imagine a lot of people aren't going to like this anyway, because it gets out of any ideological basis, and it makes us be real and honest about why we want to pick things. And if we're going to have lack of contradiction, if you accept one method, there's other things around that you'd have to accept too. And so when you look at the abortion thing, there's really the first split in the line is, do you have an abortion, or do you give birth, or do you abort? Your first question to deal with is, which one do I do? And your answer basically is going to be death or life. Now, what has made it easier, and people will talk about this, is that, well, it's not really a life yet, and so on. But if you look at the context, abortion or going term, those are the two splits. And if you look at what going term means, is that there's a baby pops out at the end. If you don't go term, the other option is the baby does not pop out at the end. And so one can say that, well, it's not life yet. We're stopping it before it defeats definitive life. And okay, fine. That's not part of the breakdown here. You need to know reasons. So why is one going to have an abortion? What is the reason? And I've come up with basically two reasons one can use. Now, I'm not, here I am. I'm the one that's Plato feeding out these static reasons, but I really did a lot of thought of it, and I think I pretty much broke it down into two reasons. And it's going to be the quality of life is one reason to have an abortion, and it's going to break down too. It's going to split off into the other reason is I'm going to do whatever I want to do. Do as thou wilt. I want an abortion. Do I need any other reason? I want to do it. Those are basically the two reasons. I come up with another. If you had to narrow it down to a heading, it would fit in one of those two things. Do whatever I want, or a quality of life issue is why you're doing it. And then, so I'm going to leave, do whatever I want to, because that's like done. That branch is done. When you get to that, nothing else to say. In the quality of life issue, it breaks down into three. There's three legs of this one. The quality of life of the individual who is considering the abortion, the quality of life of the group that this person resides in, the greater group. I mean, let's just say humanity. I mean, it could break down into ethnicity. It could be in the city. It could be country, whatever. And the third group person, the third quality of life issue would be of the fetus or child, however you want to look at it. So if you're going to get it for quality of life reasons, then it's got to fit into one of those three. There's no other people involved for the choices. Now, there's the influence that comes in as people are going down this list. Now, I'll get to that. And when you look at each member of each leg, individual, group, or the fetus/child, the quality of life issues broken down for those could be put into, I'm going to say 4, but there's a fifth, but that fifth is related to some other area. So physical, mental, emotional, or economic. And then the last one will be code of ethics. Because, again, we're going down trying to find out. So if you're an individual, your quality of life, you're having an abortion for quality of life, you're an individual, it's going to be a physical, mental, emotional, economic. Same thing with a group. Same thing with the child. For example, I'm going to give examples as we walk down this. It's not exhaustive. Individual, physical. Okay, well, I remember Lucinda as an example when she was having her child. She had cancer, and he wanted her to abort the child to start cancer treatments because, for her to get treated in time. And so that would be a reason for aborting, because the physical reason is she needed cancer treatments. Now, she chose not to and left it up to God, and the child was born fine, and she was treated for cancer and survived. But, she could have died too or whatever. So there's an example. A group example might be, let's just say economics. And that group, what group? The human race? Well, a lot of lower economic groups are looking for help for abort. Basically, population control would be a reason in the group for economics. Poor families having many kids have more kids that economically need to be done. I mean, these are some reasons. Now, as far as the fetus or child goes, maybe there's a test done and the child is going to be mentally retarded. So rather than the quality of life of the child fetus will mentally, quality of life will suffer based on a comparison to a, quote, normal life, unquote, and we'll get into all that. That might be the choice. And I'm just giving some examples. Economics, emotional, if somebody can't handle it, they're too young, they're going to handle it, there's all these reasons. Like, you can fit them in there. And I'm only giving examples to show how it works. So if you're going to have an abortion and you're going to do it either for whatever you want, quality of life, it's going to have ramifications. It's going to have criteria within that for the individual group. Now, and I actually, in giving birth, let me go back to this. Actually, the point is, and we're looking at the human life aspect of it. I should qualify that, because if you go up to the top, there's going to be a physical or humanistic or a spiritual breakdown. So those are going to be the major categories. And so we're dealing with just the human. So when someone says emotional, I want to get an abortion, and to get it or not, it has to do with your belief in God. That's going to be, we're dealt with that. That's another slice of the pie. And again, all these have to be brought back together. So code of ethics, that could be laws, it could be tradition in whatnot, and it could be the individual's tradition, code of ethics. Those are the reason why that's there is because that would be a quality of life. Going against your ethics code could cause trouble in there. But the code of ethics is going to also be an external thing. We'll see when we get to. So when you have this aspect of it, you come up with these things. What criteria are you going to use? I mean, when it says quality of life for the group, economical, you're going to have to come up with some type of criteria to determine what would be the economical advantages or disadvantages for either ends of those choices. And emotional, mental, physical, what have you. And so you have to come up with the reason. Now, you can go back up over to whatever I want, and that covers it. Again, this is not right or wrong. This is just working through it. So when you go through these aspects of it, the question is, by what authority or what standard will these things be judged? Again, we have whatever I want to do over here. And so if you're going to have a physical limit, what criteria is it going to be for the individual, the group, or for the child, the fetus? And you work through all of these by what authority? Are you going to have the authority by who's the smartest? Meaning IQ and education. Is that what's going to be the one who makes the decision or the criteria used in this? Is it going to be power? Meaning like, an army or law or politics. Like I could force you by law, by jailing, or by murdering you, or by I don't know, political assassination, whatever. What is going to be the criteria? Power? Is it going to be numbers? Is it going to be democratic? Like, okay, most people think it should be done this way, therefore we should do it that way. And back to the code of ethics, by what authority? What code of ethics? Authority now, not just code of ethics by choice, but by authority. Constitution, Bible, some other code of ethics. That's going to be used to judge. So when you use those, you have to have those authorities set in place before you go back and start to use these categories up there. And then you have, when you're talking about making the choices, as compared to what? If you're not going to go, hey, it's whatever I want, then you're going to make these choices, physical, mental, compared to using some type of authority or some type of grid or some type of reference point. And that's what, what the smartest, the most powerful numbers, code of ethics, whatever. What's going to be your criteria that you apply to this? And then what is it going to be compared to as opposed to, let's say, an animal instinct would be to get out of responsibility or to have sex knowing that you can create a child and doesn't think about it. Then if you have a child after having sex, or, an animal, rape too, with any of them. So now you have that, you're back into this stack of reasons for what you're doing based on these actions. Animal instinct, higher brain. You're going to make a decision with your higher brain. Is it a moral decision? And this outlook, of course, you see how it intertwines with one another? But you can come up with an answer. For example, if you want to look at a group and a physical, mental, emotional, economic situation, it would be called eugenics. Now, eugenics was used Hitler, but actually was invented in good old America, where you decide to have a criteria. We want to have the health. You want to have a certain level of mental, of smart IQ. You want to have them so they have all their arms and legs and toes and what have you. And you want to have limits of economics, like China had a one-child limit where they would actually there'd be penalizing if you went over it. I believe they took the child away if it was the third or something like that, or sterilization was involved. And that was a legal power going on this. And if you do have eugenics, is it for like we want to clean up the gene pool? It shows me still. Someone just said the show just ended, but it shows me doing it here. All right, let me see. Sorry for the little delay here. Well, it still shows me playing as far as I got here. I think it has to do with the, it's still broadcasting and serving here, but it's going through the world, so. All right, now I'm just, of course, now the fragile plates just all come crashing down. But back in eugenics, you could turn around as a collective, a group in the world, say, or whatever group, say, we want to strive for a good gene pool. We're going to prevent births, and we're also going to try to solve the problem on another way. I don't know, genetic editing. Those are all nightmares, potentials. But I'm just looking at it without having any of the moral implications. I'm saying that you can have a eugenics, that your goal is not getting rid of a certain race or getting rid of a certain ethnic economic group, but you want to just clean up the human gene pool. That may be your goal. Nothing, I don't know, nothing personal, but if you're pregnant and your child is either retarded or malformed, or have to have abortion, that's our rule. So then you have to go by what is it going to be? Power? Is it going to be legally enforced? Is it going to be physically enforced? I mean, you got to go through this whole kind of stack. You got to keep cycling around. So if there's an agreement on eugenics and you're doing it to clean the gene pool, this is the theory behind it. You're going to force it done. Now, what happens to people who don't want to participate? Are they forced to participate? Are they sterilized? Do you throw them out of your country? I mean, you see what people are going to have to honestly do this if they want to work through it. And they don't want to do it. They don't want to work through it. So therefore, we have this kind of willy-nilly, let's do this, and we won't talk about it, and we can do whatever we want, is what it comes down to. So if you're going to have you're going to have a eugenic system, and but unless you're rich, then you can have your child, or you're politically connected, then you can have your child. Or if you're in a socio-economic class, you'll have to do it, but others can't. You see what I mean? Are you going to be honest about it and say, yeah, we're going to do Margaret Sanger, we're going to create Planned Parenthood to get at blacks in particular, who she called weeds. We want to get birth control. This is their idea of holding it down, and it's working. I mean, a huge amount was the abortions in Alabama, 40%. Or black, the black race or ethnicity. So, if you want to sit down and say, let's say, create a country where all the people agree that they want a eugenics philosophy, and here's the criteria, physical, mental, and whatever like that, and everyone agrees to it, you can have peace with that decision in that collective by saying we're fair about it. Nobody's being oppressed. We're not making somebody. We're all agreeing to it. We're all going along with it. And we're all doing it. And you can have peace of mind with this. Or you can do like was done in Germany, where you would get rid of the ones you don't want, and you have the idea so the people are happy within the chosen eugenics group, and the other people don't count. They're farmed out, killed, or what have you. And so a lot of those people involved in that, in the mass population, let's say Germany, was not privy to all of this. So they weren't going, yeah. And when it came out what was going on, they sure didn't have a satisfied mind when they found out about it. Right? Terrible guilt and oppression. And of course, it was used and abused politically by the winners, too, to really jam it to everybody. And look at the SS people, for example. They're all fine with this until they got arrested and put on trial. Then they want to kill themselves. I don't want to deal with that, So if the person would stand there and say, yeah, I think there was nothing wrong with this, and they went through it, it doesn't mean it isn't. But you understand what I mean about the satisfied mind part. And the danger of doing it only in a human physical term, that's the danger. Is that you have the ability to make your own little group of people together, and you're putting it only on humanistic, you can come up with one and get yourself a satisfied mind, but in a pseudo sense, in a physical, humanistic only sense. And that's the question I have. I'd like to have an honest talk with someone who's an atheist and ask questions like, well, how do you determine your morals as an atheist? I guess we're segmenting into the spiritual side. Because if I didn't have the belief or the inside knowingness, was how I would put it, but from your listening to me perspective, belief. Oh, I have Margie in the chat room. Hello, Margie. How's Tommy doing? We have, if you have the spiritual aspect of it, and you're going to bring that into the equation, well, now we got a whole another list to go through. You have the spiritual reasons. You have the individual, group, the child, physical, mental, emotional, and all like that. You would then start to say, but what power would it be? And now if you're going to use some kind of a spiritual authority, what is it going to be? Is it going to be God of the Jews, the Christians, the Muslims? When I mentioned about atheists, I'd like to know to an atheist, if I had, that's right, I got switched there. If I could somehow be shown that I had the total knowledge that there wasn't anything after death, that life was only physical, if that was the case, then I would immediately kill myself and recommend all that. I wouldn't take anybody with me. I would leave it to their own being, but I would recommend people do the same, because what you're saying is, if you look at the Darwinian humanistic view, that all of this stuff, hold on, I'm sneezing now. Everything happened because of through evolution of the science, building up the matter and all this stuff was, let's say, accidental. Some have tried to revitalize it by saying it was causal in the construction of matter causes this to happen. But not to get too off track, you notice the universal laws in the universe is basically everything is entropy. So I was going to say something like entropic reaction. Entropy, where everything is going to the lowest energy, which should be the opposite of evolution. The evolution is evolving to a higher complexity, while the tug of the universe is to break down into lower complexity. Because of the cycles of like the sun blowing off irradiation, to heat the world, everything being the right way apart and all this stuff, you cause this conditions to allow life, which is the opposite, to grow in complexity. But anyway, my point asking the atheist is like, why would you... Question would be, why would you bother? Because once you die, you are going to have no recollection. In fact, you won't be, so there's nothing for you to recollect because there's no you to recollect. So that everything you've done in this life will be meaningless when you die. Now, you could say, well, I'm going to help my kids get better, and that'll carry on my name and all that, which is all worthless to you going into nothingness. That's a trick of the alive and the now. That's a trick of the ego trying to say, well, I'm going to, I have my DNA will continue on through my children and so on and so on. And that's a trick. Now, they can come back and say, well, it's a trick to think that you're going to have some kind of a magic escape clause to get out of dying and go into a life. And that's still, okay, let's say that's true. You're still going to nothingness. So why are you even here? The whole universe would be a trick. But anyway, I kind of got off on the track, but it's important that you do have
a spiritual aspect of this, because you can come up with a humanistic-centered, very oppressive system. Because if I said earlier, everybody agrees they're going to have these rules for eugenics, and everybody's going to be on. Not everybody's going to be on the same page, and when it comes to them, they're going to want it different. It historically has been 100% that's happened. Now, you could come up with this fictitious area with all these people agreeing and have it for the first time in history be successful, and have no psychopaths trying to use and manipulate and gain for further gain and power, and it'll be the first time in history that'll ever happen. Or you can learn from the history to realize that that's always in the mix, so to speak. So the question is that are we spiritually mature enough to make these decisions humanistically? And are we mature enough in our humanness to make it? And are we mature enough spiritually to make it? So if you want to throw the spirituality into the mix, now it gets more complicated, because not only do you have the human reasons, but now you have spiritual reasons. So the spiritual aspect puts in life after death, and that there could be some principles in the life that are for the benefit of the spiritual side to the detriment of the physical side, to a net gain altogether. And I'll give you an example without even getting spiritual about it. You got cancer in your hand. Now, you can not going to get your hand cut off, let's say, and then have a body that will survive. Or you can say, no, I want to keep my hand, and then the cancer spreads and the whole body dies. See, so the greatness of the body, the human body, quality of life, will be better for the low quality aspect of that moment of cutting off your hand. You'll have the greater longevity of life, will be the greater good for that. So if you want to take that solely physical example and move it into the spiritual realm, your soul may have some benefit in having these going through counterintuitive selfishness. It's against your goal. Like, I want to do whatever I want. Well, there might be a spiritual benefit growing in character, knowing the body will. So if you go through the, say you choose, you choose the hard road, hard physically, mentally, emotionally, and economically, of keeping your child when it wasn't in an optimal created sense, whether it be rape, whether it be foolishness, and you're economically not ready, or you're in school, you're young. By keeping the child, or at least producing the child and allowing adoption, there may be a higher spiritual greatness in that, because the experience of going through that will actually not only help your spirit, but because of the spiritual knowledge of the help it will give to you going through this, you would end up afterwards, I'm happy I did that. You would not have known that given a humanistic view of it without having the knowledge. Now, keeping it all humanistic, somebody can come to you and say to you, yes, if you go through this, you will have greaterness in your own personal consciousness, your conscience, your physicalness will be good. Yeah, for example, if you don't have an abortion, you'll have there's physical problems that come along with it. You won't have those physical problems. You'll have the natural physical problems of the child, and it'll go on. But if you're going to keep it that way, that means that person is highly mature to be able to see the long term. And so now you're still latching on to a higher ideal rather than doing anything you want, or simply looking at it in a physically, mentally, emotionally, and economically. So there's another thing that hold on to it. So when I see people who talking about having an abortion because of various reasons, all right, they're making these choices, but you have to make these choices. And there are people who have made them, where they've had an abortion, and for the physical, mental, emotional reasons of the quality of life for the individual group or whatever, and have peace of mind with that, though it's an unpleasant decision. And this is where I think no matter how kind of laws you make about it, what I see from the spiritual side is God doesn't shoot lightning bolts out of the sky when we do something wrong. If you want to look at it in that aspect, the whole point of this life, and this is where my spiritual when I look into it with this, what my spiritual, I don't know what you call it, cowl, I don't know, is that the whole point of life here is for us to make decisions, but why we make decisions is more important. Making a flippant decision is bad. And when someone who has, for example, had an abortion in the past, had a change of heart and said, man, I shouldn't have done that, or whatever, one can still gain peace of mind in the understanding this, realizing the right way and do it. You see how the peace of mind can be depending on how you look at it. And so from a God's perspective, I look down on this, trying to look through God's eyes. God is more important, being connected to all involved, including the children who may or may not be aborted. The important thing is what you do and why and how you follow through, because blessings can come in it. Now, I'm a theist, and so a lot of my choices are going to be talked about in theistic tones. So if you're an atheist, which is why I'd like to talk about stuff like this, because they could bring out a theistic phraseology I'm using. Because, I just have this, you could say people shouldn't steal because then they won't go to prison or they won't get killed trying to steal. And therefore they'll avoid that. And that's good enough reason. You don't even need to get, it's a sin or anything like that. There's plenty of humanistic reasons not to do that kind of thing. So try to not make it based in a theistic decision. But I can't help to be theist, and I've made theism by choice and by experience in my life. So I have that aspect. So when I make the decisions, I'm not doing it by an arbitrary code, like thou shalt not kill. And if you do research on the word, it's kill in the terms of murdering. So like if you put a prisoner to death, it's not murdering that prison who killed somebody, per se. I'm not saying you even need to. I'm saying it's murder, which is considered innocence. So thou shalt not kill, well, and the Christian anti-abortion crowd or right to life crowd will say, no, you shouldn't kill a child, it's murder, and so on like that. And so what will be done is then this child will be forced to be born in a house that didn't want it, who has a financially problematic or emotionally problematic parents and out on the street and blah, blah, blah. Should that child, are you saying that it's better to kill him than have him go into that? That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that there's cause and effect, and this is where the whole spiritual analysis comes in. So if you're going to go to a person and say you cannot have an abortion for convenience sake or whatever sake, economic sake, and because of the child has precedence, that life of the child is important, you cannot snuff that life out. Even though you're not prepared in any way or shape or form to take care of the child, you're not even willing to. That child, we are now saying that child who has a right to life is also going to be put in a lesser situation. This is why, my brother said this to me. He said, the Christians are anti-abortion and all that, which, he agrees with, but why isn't there a Christian adoption group next to every abortion clinic? And I said, well, there actually are a lot of people out there who do have adoption options. Now, I don't think it meets the demand of the volume. And I'm not saying every person would go along with it, even if it did. But there are people like that. But this is when you say you're pro-life and you're going to make a law using the power of the army, law, or politics, or even numbers, democracy, and you're using a code of ethics, which would be the Constitution or Bible or what have you, and you're going to tell that person that child has rights and you cannot snuff that child out, then the group saying this is now partially responsible for that child. Because if the child dies, there's nothing you can do about it. If the child is going to live, then there's a responsibility for that life that you have now made to come in the world. Like, I didn't make them. They're the ones that had sex. They're the ones who had sex. I didn't make it. I know. But because of your legal actions, you are now causing that child to be alive in the world. Now, I'm not saying one individual in the group is going to have to do this. I'm just saying this is part of the whole package. Now, some of the problems with that, right? Some of the problems with that is going to be, okay, so all the low income, either low IQ or at least low education people are going to be multiplying like rabbits. And so the other people are going to have to then not have children and adopt these children in order to raise them property. I know it's problematic. This is the problem. This is why there has to be a comprehensive approach to this. I'm gonna have to sneeze again. And of course that same government, the same state government, whatever, who will say no abortion, it's okay to kill innocent people as we're bombing in Yemen. And so on. And that's okay. It's okay to kill children if it's an accident in an act of war, which they're not even attacking us. It's not attacking. It's like you may be threatened by somebody in Nevada robbing your house, so you go and you blow up their neighborhood so that they don't come rob your house. But that's okay. But those same people say, nope, children have to be born. We're going to punish. And then the same aspect is the person who is going to say, well, what about rape or incest? Well, in cases of rape or incest, then that child should be killed. I'm using these words purposely because of the contradictions that are in behind it. So if you're saying, well, no, that child, it's not the child's fault that child is being born with bad DNA connections because of the choices made in the outside, even if it's one-sided, rape. That child still has a right, right? Well, then that person would have to go term, and they would be helped doing that, and then somebody would adopt it. But then it'd say, well, wait a minute, that's unfair to the person who got raped. Well, this is why rape should be punishable severely so that it doesn't happen. It should be taught, and I don't mean the Me Too stuff. It should be taught respect. I mean, I myself, I wouldn't dance with another woman. I wouldn't touch another woman. Not that I'm afraid I'm going to rape her. It's just that you have boundaries. And if you're playing sports or something, it's one thing. But you know what I'm saying? You can have an ethics set up so that I'm not going to rape a woman. Well, what if you got drunk and did it? I don't drink. What if you got high and did it? I don't get high. Why? Because I don't want to do anything that wouldn't be of my total conscious effort. What about someone who lies about you? Well, then they're the crime. And again, if you're having sex with a woman or you're not married to, and then they turn around and say it's rape, what are you having sex for? I'll give you an example about a guy I know was talking about a guy, he was gay, and he went to a gay bar. And he was telling me a story about a friend who did this. He went to a gay bar, and he got picked up by a guy, and they had sex out in a car, and then after the guy had sex, he beat him up. So it turned out the guy was a heterosexual guy who got mad and beat up the gay guy because he had sex with him. He thought that was bad. I go, yeah, it was bad, but what's the guy doing out in the car having sex with him? If the guy wouldn't have done that, 100% effective of stopping the problem. So, that's the whole aspect of it. When you have the situation set up where you have severe penalties for rapists, you have a family structure so that your females are not going out in a situation to be compromised, all those odds come down tremendously to stop what is happening. I mean, right now we're having laws saying they're trying to pass an equality law that men can go get hormone shots and become a half a woman, go into a woman's bathroom, go into a woman's training room, compete in women's Olympics. Well, what? This is all mental illness and insanity. And of course, the people in charge, I know why they're doing it. They want to break down the morals of society. It's easier to control animals than it is to have educated, moral humans. So if they want to control the world, you have to break down society. You break it down physically, mentally, emotionally, economically, and spiritually. So you claim there's no God, or you have some type of conglomerate with no ethics, with no morals that are taught. You don't have the morals now. You don't have the traditions of the family. You don't have the family. You want to have somebody, and if by chance a certain group gets out of hand, well, abortion's always there to help out. If you're rich and you happen to be, maybe you got drunk and compromised, or you got abused or raped, well, you can just go have the abortion. We don't want to go into the stigma. We don't want it to go out and do all that stuff. Now, I'm not criticizing I'm a guy. Oh, you're a guy. You're criticizing the woman. What are you talking about? No, I'm just saying that on the whole, it could be the way around. Someone could blame me of sexual assault, without any type of DNA exchange. It's going to be their word against mine, and right, you should just believe the woman. No, wait a minute, that's not right. But what I'm saying is the actual answer to all these problems is if you had a culture that respected women, that protected women, and you had a moral interaction between men and women, that you didn't have sexual encounters until you were in a position to have children. And that if you did get pregnant, then that would be, you would at least carry the child to term and have them adopted. And if it does if all of those things are true, and you have very strict laws for those who break these things, there's going to be people who fall through the cracks. And the problem with allowing, in that case, then it would be okay. There are reasons or what have you to have an abortion, but they're so small and rare that the bottom line is people just want to do what they want to do, and they'll use these examples, which are statistically rare. And I'll give you some statistically rare examples on a pro-life sense, and I have the links down below. Let's see, where was that? Here's a guy, here's a link. I was conceived in rape, and I'm the one they exploit to justify abortion. So it's 1%. So here's a guy, and I have the links down there. He was conceived in rape. His mother went term, put her from an abortion. He was adopted by loving parents, and here he is, whole and happy. I don't know what the situation was of the rape, but there's an example of somebody who would be, who is a small percentage of that percentage. Here's one that wasn't, killed and turned out. So there's a good example. So if people are giving me bad examples, there's a good example, right? And if you bring in the spiritual aspect of it, you bring God into it. And if you look at the moralities as taught by Jesus, it's me personally. I mean, I'm not going to go through the whole litany of all the religious texts around the world because I don't have the time, and it wouldn't really matter. But what do you think from a divine perspective, if you're a person who goes term so you wouldn't kill the child because you honor the system that was made to create life and you gave it up to adoption, I would think that would work out for you karmically. You know, this comes into the spiritual aspect, and a secular humanist is going to go like, don't give me that crap, don't hear me that karma crap. So I understand that. But when you have the broader context, if you have any, and what I like on the secular humanist side are those who have some kind of a spiritual experience, and yet they're atheists. No, there is no spiritual experience in an atheistic Darwinian situation, unless you want to try and write into the story that at some point human beings do develop a soul, and now they have an afterlife for the first time, you know, whenever that happened, 100,000 years ago, whatever. But before that, the entire history of the universe, there wasn't soul, or maybe other planets are now, so now there are souls. But see, that's all arbitrary as well. So whatever people are building, it doesn't matter. It matters in the best interest of all involved, including the littlest ones. There were a few other people I remember have the examples, and I'm sure there's an example of somebody who got pregnant, decided to have the child, had a bad time of it. The kid got had bad things happen to him, and they turned out bad. I mean, it's bad. It's all bad. We're in a fallen, corrupt world. It's all bad. So you have to do the highest, best good, and sometimes the individual in doing the highest, best good, who is the innocent party, takes it on the chin. And that is where I think my personal theology that I would offer for those who would be interested is that when you do the highest, best good at your detriment, you will be rewarded many times over, shaken and pushed down, overflowing, etc. This is where I think the aspects of it come in. Many a mother has done heroics in raising their kids. 3 jobs. I mean, I look at this stuff and I go, oh, my God. And, this is when you die with a satisfied mind and move on into the afterlife. If you're going to live as a secular humanist and do whatever you want as your options, going back to my front, then you're banking on nothing being there when you die. And it's not that I'm looking at God's going to punish you. It's the way I look at my theology is that you're going to go into the energy that you create. That's the situation waiting for you, only it's expanded. And people can say, oh, you can say anything you want. You can make up stuff. Yeah, I understand that. But I'm the one living in it myself. I'm not out making people not get abortions or making them. I'm just sharing the aspect of it on there. And what we're looking for is an excuse for a convenience in our life at the expense of one who hasn't had a word in it. And that if someone is going to be furious about, somebody's like, so you're saying somebody who's a kid that should go term and all that, the fury should be at the society who allows these things to happen and doesn't have a safety net for those who do. That's where the fury resides, not on me. It deserves to have care to be taken of. And the churches would be the forefront in this scenario, that they would be setting up ministries to be able to take in these kids. Now, there are a lot of people who are doing it, and God bless them, right? And so this is the whole aspect. If you want an answer to a problem, the answer is going to hurt somewhere, because the problem is a hurting problem. If you got a tumor in your hand, the answer is going to hurt. If at least, say like you have cannabis treatments and it works, you're still going to have the cannabis treatments. You're going to have to go through, you're not going to go like, well, I'm not going to do anything and it'll just go away. The answer is going to hurt regardless of what it is. But whatever it is, you have to set it up and have a clear conscience on it, because one of the things that have been taught about throughout time is hypocrites. So, you could talk about any topic But what you're going to do is nobody who's on all sides of these, nobody's going to like say, for the options that I'm saying, nobody's going to like this. Because if you are going to make someone not have an abortion, then the instrument of stopping that person from doing that has a responsibility in that child's life. Just like the person who created the life, created the pregnancy, has responsibility in that pregnancy. So you have the father, and you have the mother, and then you have the system in the world around to try and help them. Now, if you want to make it and this is another reason why they're going for separation of church and state, which is not what the whole Constitution said, but is they don't want to have the spiritual influence. They want a total secular, humanist, selfish system, so that when the leaders of that system, the elitists, come in and affect your life, they're going to say to you, well, you do the same thing. Whatever fits for you, whoever has to pay for it, whoever has to suffer for it, it don't matter. I'm going to do the same thing. Only I'm up the food chain now, so you're the one that's going to be oppressed. Of course, that could happen anyway, even if you were doing the right thing and along the way. But that, again, is where the suffering for righteousness' sake that's written everywhere, and all, whether it be whatever your flavor of spirituality, a very common thread. And of course, in my theology, the reason why the world is created is a finite, confined space, limited results, to try out these spiritual rules that, when applied in a higher spiritual setting, would be more costly to violate, would cause more damage. So things are actually being contained here. We're all going to die. We have limited amount of harm we can do one another. Now, some have more than others. If you have the authority to send like a nuclear bomb, you could do an awful lot of damage. Okay? But you're still going to have a limited damage in opposed to the universe, contained, and all the problems we're suffering now are all going to be spiritually dealt with in the principles. I'm going to sneeze again. So when you look at Jesus' teachings, my personal favorite is his teachings on it. If you follow these principles, you will develop your divine connections and insights and will be better suited to move on as you move to the other side. Now, again, if I'm talking to an atheist, that doesn't mean anything. But then I would say that atheists have contradictions in a lot of their positions because they don't have a God, and yet they have moral principles that have, I question why even have it. I mean, you can behave because you're afraid of going to jail. That would be a reason to behave, I guess. And it's not spiritual. But this is what's happening in these times. Is people are saying all the craziness breaking out is just the barriers of that law that restrained you, that stopped you from making a choice of your morality, is being removed. So a lot of people, I think, are going to find out that they are divinely connected, even though they consider themselves atheists. That'll be very interesting to see. So that, and I don't mean see like be afraid. It's like when Jesus' criteria for deciding who is in the Father's house is not what religion you are, what words you said, but all his teachings are how you lived. And what belies a spiritually connected person is their principles in life and how they live. Do they cheat, lie, steal? Are they selfish to the point of hurting others to get what they want? These are all signs that I don't care if they're a Christian, Muslim, a Jew, or an atheist. Those are the principles that belie your spiritual connection, not the words you say. And you can read the book of James for those who are going to be upset by the apparent work salvation. I'm saying, no, it's not the case. And so I think somebody who while being inconvenienced, to say the least. But for the life of the child, which is not their desire to have, goes term because of honoring that life of the child, even though they're going to go for adoption, and that shows a huge amount of spiritual character. Because of the, especially when you have the convenient actions that are going off in the world with the, trying to have the, we'll call it a cheap abortion. And then you look at the, I said before, going back to my original things, the quality of life reasons, the group, and economics, there is an incentive in a group, which would be like a Planned Parenthood group, to have abortions for the selling of the parts, for the money making of the actual abortions. There's an incentive to have the abortion. So you have the pressure, not only the internal or the problematic, or how am I going to, the economic of my own self, how am I going to handle this? You have the pressure on the outside saying, yes, all your troubles can be gone. Just come here. No problems. We'll even have a way for somebody, to help pay for it. And, you have that pressure as well, saying it's easier to do the, this way than to go that hard way. And it's not your fault. And somebody did this to you. And you have those pressures. And someone who, let's put it this way, someone who withstands that as the child, and I understand I'm a guy, right? I have nothing to say about it. Well, I'm a human being, too. And in these positions, taking that high road will have its own personal spiritual benefits. And taking the low road, and there are cases when, it literally is the life of the, I don't know, how early can a child get pregnant? 10? At some point, there's going to be physical problems with that in and of itself, forgetting the whole emotional thing, having a kid. At some point, there's something to do there, and that's why I was talking to this one guy, his theory was that you can have an abortion like in the, I don't know what he said, the first 8 weeks, 5 weeks, I don't know what it was, 15 days, I don't know, some small number. Otherwise, you have to go term. So there's people trying to get with the birth control like shortly after any type of potential connection. And even that, people are arguing against that, but even that, isn't that in the right direction? So this is where it comes down to, is if people don't want to have this discussion. You could talk about Donald Trump, you could talk about money, the dollar, you could talk about anything you want to talk about. People will not use these principles to find the answer because they're afraid the answer is going to be what they don't want to do. And if they can justify it through coming up with their own situation, then they will do it. And that's fine, because whatever you do in your life is going to be, I had a saying that I come up with, the greatest influence in your life is you. Because your choices will be the most powerful influences in your life. So make those choices very carefully. People have joined, the services. When they go to war, they get blown apart, they get back and traumatized and all that. This is where our whole government is screwy. Because I wouldn't have anybody going anywhere unless the U.S. was being attacked. Then we do it. Don't go fight over there. It's all political stuff. It's all immoral. It's like, well, we should do if somebody's going to join the military and they're going to volunteer to fight for our freedoms aren't fighting in Syria. It's not our freedoms. It's the aspects of it are going to be what are we really fighting for? And we're doing it for political reasons. We're doing it for someone else's convenience, for money, for this and that. It's all a complete effrontery. All terrible. That's why you got guys going out to serve our country, coming back screwed up because they saw what's going on. And, talk about karmic trouble. Anyway, this is where I think that, you don't need to have a list of rules. You don't need to have the 10 Commandments. You don't have to have some kind of arbitrary power working on you to come up with the idea that abortion is not a good idea, that it should be avoided at all costs, and life is precious, and we all should pitch in for life. Now, it also includes education, both moral and physical, not just handing out condoms, but developing the moral system behind it, that you don't be doing that kind of thing unless you're in a position to have children. Because then you're with someone who you have... The whole problem with sex, rampant sex, is that from my spiritual perspective, and this is also actual experience myself, is that when you have a sexual relationship with a woman, a guy to woman, whatever, if you're not in a love position with them, if you're not in a marriageable position, if you're not in that position that you might have kids, let's say, that kind of bond between you, when you do have those relations, the actual experience is like 1,000 times more wonderful than just simply like scratching your back or reaching orgasm. And so when you start out telling kids, yeah, it's okay, here, use condoms, okay, and you start having sex willy-nilly, you're going to be breaking those fine spiritual, emotional feelers that interact when you have a loving relationship. So why is it tied in? The secular humanist would be saying something like, well, they tied in the reproductive thing with sex so that the culture will continue. Well, yeah, all right, I would look at it and say that because reproducing children should be related to the most intimate, personal, and love-based act that people can have. This is the problem, is that the people wanting to tear down society, I would call them some Satanists or whatever. I would say some kind of negative spiritual inspiration is helping along the way. But, the human itself has plenty of stuff to work with, wants to break that down. So, of course, you break down the man-woman marriage situation. You have promiscuity. You have mind-altering stuff so that, you can get drunk and have sex or whatever, and rape or whatever. Then you throw in some ridiculous religious stuff, like I hear from the Sharia things, like, well, it's okay if a guy rapes a non-Muslim. Ridiculous. All of that stuff's, I'm not saying it's not true. I'm saying that the principle of that is ridiculous. And these are all excuses. And this is why the powers that be are using this. They want to break down the system. So, of course, they want a legal abortion. Of course, they want to have import the low-educated, low IQ, can't read or write, based in a hardcore, brutal, fundamentalist religion. Of course. Now, I've dealt, remember, I came from a fundamentalist Baptist setting. I've talked to people who wanted to go back to the good old days where they would tear down the high places and all these Satanistic and, they would go in and burn down spiritual bookstores, and they would do it. It's just that the Christians over time has been too civilized. They've been too civilized down from that aggressive behavior. So now you're taking people out of the wild who have all of the perfect storm bad traits for this, and you stick them in the situation. Of course, it all makes sense to me. I look at this and go, like, how could this all just be happening? Because they want to break. This is a war. This is the modern day Trojan horse. They're bringing in the Trojan horse is helping. It's multiple. One of them is helping the immigrant, quote unquote, who is being strategically brought here because of their systems. And the nice immigrants who are being brought here are going to overload the economic system. The bad ones are going to be criminals. You got 2 hits with the same deal. Meanwhile, inside, you're having a breakdown in society, rampant sex, abortion, all these type of things to completely desensitize. With divorce being up, it's, well, we'll get married too fast and then divorce because it doesn't work out. I'm divorced. Look, I never said I wasn't a sinner here. I got plenty of stuff on both sides of this. But I'm just saying that if we step back and we did this, we wouldn't be having the discussion on when is okay for abortion. It wouldn't be happening because we wouldn't be in that position. So trying to solve it by simply making a law and punishing bad behavior, undesired behavior, is not the answer. It's maybe part of a comprehensive package to turn the ship around. But there's one thing it needs to do. It needs to be turned around, or we're going down in the toilet. And if you need examples, just look around the world. So, and again, I wanted to come up with some kind of like outline I could just post. You could download a PDF for the outline, but it's too complicated. It's a simple thought, and maybe somebody better than me can put it together in an outline form. But you have to break down the situation into, the human, physical, spiritual, the human aspect and spiritual. And then you break it down into, the 2 choices, abortion or going term. And then the reasons for either. Like I said, one side, I'm going to recap this, I guess, when I end here. One is, hey, whatever I want. That's the reason. Okay, that's one. The other reason could be quality of life. And the quality of life to the individual, to the group, and to the child or fetus, how you're going to look at it. And then of those 3 groups, you have the moral, physical, mental, emotional, and economic aspects of the quality of life by that choice for those individuals. So then you have the authority of what the answer is going to be asserted by. Is it going to be brought on by the smartest? The smartest people, the highest IQs, they'll tell us what to do. Is it going to be enforced by power? Like an army or law or politics? Is it going to be numbers? Is it going to be like, well, more people think this, so therefore we got to do that? And then by that weight, force the other one. Or throw people out who don't want that? Then what code of ethics will be involved? None. Like let's say a Bible, be it Christian or Jewish, or the Koran, or constitutions, or what kind of code of ethics? And again, how are you going to go in there and enforce it? And what kind of maturity is going to be involved in this? Just because you're IQ and educated does not mean you're mature, or powerful, or what have you, or religious for that matter. The choices that we make are they going to be based on an animalistic instinct, the gut reaction, the low animal type thing? Are they going to be the higher functions of the brain, more morality? All of these variables have to be addressed. And what pops out the other side are answers and solutions. Approaches, let me put it that way, approaches which lead to solutions. The answer is simply not. So, again, I'm not saying I'm against having a law which says you can't have an abortion after, I don't know what the word, 8 weeks, whatever it is. I'm not saying that fine. Fine. I think abortion is a bad choice. But then we also have to have, as a human beings, if you want to call it the government, I buy for the people. If you want to put that in there, the people have to be there for those making those choices, because society is part of the reason it's happening. We're all part of the reason it's happening. Not necessarily personally, me or you, but collectively we are. If we're going to be human beings, then we have to look collectively at human beings. Or we can go all the way back up to the top and go like, no, I'm going to do whatever I want, just what I want to. Whatever, do as thou wilt. And the hell with the consequences. Those are really the choices. That's why it's the first choice. Are we going to just do whatever we want? And if we got power, we got money, and we have political connections that could do it. If that's the deal, survival of the fittest, if that's what it is, then let's say that. You be honest about it, that we're working with that kind of deal. Because then you can have things like people deciding to break away and form their own countries or states or how you want to call it with the principles and all that. We have to be honest about that. And what I see, what the lack of honesty means, what I say is happening is that you're having a concerted effort to break down society so that it can be run by tyranny, by tyrannists, if there's such a word. That's what it is, tyrannists. Whether you want to call it communist, they talk about communism, socialism, capitalism, and all this. All the isms can work out if the heart was, looking at it for the highest, best good of all involved. I mean, it sounds good, each to his own need, by each to his own ability. It sounds great. But, of course, that will be manipulated to allow people to look like, no, you don't have to do anything. No, you're okay here, but I want you to vote for me. You'll see that all of these influx of people have a multiple task to bring down the economic system, to bring in crime, to also become magic voters. I hope that. I'm not saying I said anything that necessarily no one else would have gotten, but I'm hoping it helps some degree to bring, because if somebody says to me that, abortion is murder, God said so, and that's the answer, it's not good enough. I mean, it's not that it's not true, but how come it's okay to kill children in Yemen? How's that okay? Why is that all right? And we'll go back to the Chelsea Manning stuff that she released, where they showed them shooting, the video of them shooting civilians, and when they go over to hit them, they say they're kids. They just shot a bunch of kids. Well, and then the guy says, well, this is a war zone. They shouldn't be bringing your kids in them. Hey, dude, this is where they live. You're bringing to war to those kids. That it's like that has to be addressed. If you're going to say it's killing the child is wrong, it's killing, well, then war is wrong too. You can't have both. You can't have it either way. And this is why, again, you don't want to have the discussion. Because if somebody who's got a very strong pro-life stance also happens to be a lot of times pro-military, and there's nothing wrong with the military, it's a bad world, you got to have that around there. But when you're using them for political gain and killing civilians in the process and going, oh, well, that, then that's wrong too. And that's another reason why this discussion is hard to have, because people on all sides, once they have this discussion, in all honesty, they're going to be deeply moved and upset inside, because they're going to realize that a lot has to change fundamentally, and it's overwhelming. But you realize that the answer really is each person following this code, this, and doing the best they can. Because not only does it help society, if it's not too little, too late in terms of volume, but it also helps from the spiritual end. It's like God could, again, I'm going to bring my theism in it. God could bless and enter space-time in from the other side because of the people who are doing it. Now, why doesn't God do it anyway? I'll have a whole show on God if you want, but the whole point of it is, for some reason, our personal freedom of choice is highest priority, even to the point of destruction. The good news is that when people have a freedom of choice for the higher best good, sometimes that has a spiritual rub-off. And that's where I would say on that. So, I wish I had, millions of dollars to set up a fund for what have you, but I don't. But the deal is as you go through your life, you just can, what will be placed in front of you, not far away from you. You don't have to go looking for it. You just walk through your life. Jesus says, that one line that Jesus says they use, go you therefore and teach all nations. No, it's the translation, I think, should be, as you go, exhibit for everybody your principles of love and life that I taught you, and it will rub off. And so that's where I guess I would go with that. Be the example on it. If you want to leave comments on this, I could do another show, bring up some stuff. I don't have a lot of time to respond in comments and writing because I'm busy. I can talk to people a lot, but I can't write a lot. And I'm not that great a writer anyway, so even that takes a long time when I do. But, comments are going to be open underneath this. If you're in Spreaker, you could just type, even though it's not live, and at one point you can still type, and it'll go there. Plus, this gets uploaded to YouTube after this is all done, so comments can be done there. My email is james@feet-to-the-fire-radio. Also, Feet to Fire Radio. Keep that in mind. That's where all this stuff is. There's no commenting there because I just frankly don't have the time to go through the miles and miles of spam that would be there if I opened it up. Oh, my God. If I've seen the stuff that's there. So I can't do that. But those methods, if you want to send me a nice email, well thought out. You could disagree. That's fine. I'm willing, let's go out and talk about it. That's fine, because my goal here is to find solutions, and I'm stepping up to the plate and taking a whack at it just because. And I'll be more than happy to have someone come on who can add to it or better it or whatever, or even change it around. So I think that's going to be that. I have to get ready. I'm going out to Ohio tomorrow. So what the deal is with this. Here we go. There we go. And so I'm going to bid you farewell. Thanks for listening. And I'll thank you ahead of time for any comments. Feet to the fire. Reach for the skies within. Because those skies are unlimited.
Oh, my old friend, the one who walked before, the one who walked again, the ancient one of old, with wisdom for the new, revive our inner sight, retell your timeless truths. Oh, it's your word.
Feet to Fire is a production of IPS Media Works on the OnSync Radio network of stations.
Did what I had to do. My dues, shook this dust from my shoes, right there beside. I couldn't be denied. To myself I have lied, and I wonder, yes I wonder. What is